Alright, hello guys. Today we are going to be going over Mono White Humans. Mono White Humans is pretty simple, and the point of the deck is to have creatures that get buffed or just get big and yeah, do a lot of damage with just a couple of creatures. So first and foremost, we're going to be running 19 lands, of course. The peak of our curve is 3 mana, so we don't need that much land. Yeah. We're going to be running 1 copy of Knight of Glory, which is a 2-drop. It says, has protection from black. This creature can't be blocked, targeted, dealt damage, or enchanted by anything black. And it has Exalted as well. We are going to be running 2 copies of Accorder Paladin. And this says, Battle Cry. Whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0. It's a 3/1 2-drop, so it's kinda weak, but for that damage, it's pretty good. This is going to be a pretty aggressive deck. We're running 2 copies of Elite Vanguard. It's a 1-drop. It's a 2 mana 1. It's a 1 mana 2/1. We're only running 2 of these because we have a lot of better cards to get to, and most of them only cost 2 mana, but we do have a couple of 3-drops, so we have better cards to get to than that. But if you run across that, that's not the worst. We're going to be running 1 copy of Mycaius the Lunarch. He costs 1 mana and X, and he enters with X 1/1 counters on him. You can tap him and put a 1/1 counter on him, or tap him, remove a 1/1 counter, and buff everything else. That falls directly under our plan, which is why we're running him. We're running 2 copies of Gideon's Avenger. It's a 3-drop that is a 2/2. But whenever a creature or an opponent controls becomes tapped, put a 1/1 counter on it. I don't even think I need to explain to you guys how overpowered that is, because if they let it get big, like after it gets past 4, which won't be hard, because if you're going against an aggro deck, all you have to do is not block with that for like a turn or 2, and you're gonna have a lot of 2-drops and 1-drops that you can block with in this deck. So, you know, that'll get really big really quickly. We have Elite Inquisitor running 2 copies of this. It's a 2-drop, 2 mana 2/2, that has First Strike and Vigilance, protection from vampires, werewolves, and from zombies. I don't think it needs any further introduction or explaining that. It doesn't buff things, but it's just so good. It's such a good 2-drop. We're going to be running 2 copies of Glory Seeker. It's just a 2 mana 2/2, you know, and we need more of that in this deck, you know. Less of the 2/1s, more of the 2 mana 2/2s. So I decided to throw those 2 in there. 4 copies of Thalia's Lieutenant. It says, when it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on each other human you control. When another human enters the battlefield, put a 1 under your control. When another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on Thalia's Lieutenant. It does cost 2 mana for a 1/1, but it gets big very quickly. The last game I let someone else play this deck, it got to a 9/9 because I didn't have any answers for it. So it gets big, and it gets big in a hurry, and it also buffs everything else on the battlefield. What more could you ask for? If you play that right in the middle of the game, you've just got big creatures, and you've got another creature that gets big. You couldn't ask for anything more. We're going to be running 2 copies of Perimeter Captain. These have Defender. It's a 0/4. And whenever a creature you control with Defender blocks, you may gain 2 life. We only want to run 2 copies of this because too many of that could screw us over. If we get more than one in our hand, it could screw us over in the first place. So, you know, if we were to top deck that, that would be probably one of the worst things that could happen to us. So we only want to run 2 copies of that. We're running another 2-drop, Grand Abolisher. We're running 3 of these. Grand Abolisher says it's a 2-mana 2/2, and during your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. I don't think I need to explain how good that is. It completely shuts down control on your turn because they can't counter spells. They have to use removal spells on their turn, and that is just good. Alright, we're going to be running 2 copies of Toppan Freeblade. It's a 2-mana 2/2, another one, with Vigilance and Renown 1. It's pretty good, but we only have room for not that many cards left, so only 2 copies of that, sadly. Just because, well, I can. We're running Consul's Lieutenant with First Strike and Renown 1. We're running 4 copies of this. 2-mana 2/1. I know that may not seem like a lot, but it's definitely a very good deterrent for those 2/2s, those pesky 2/2s that chip away at you. And since it has First Strike, you can go ahead and attack with it, and if they have 2/2s out, you can kind of attack, well, you know, joyfully, I guess, for the lack of a better word. We're going to be running 2 copies of Thalia, Heretic Cathar. It's a 3-mana 3/2 with First Strike, so again, works as deterrent. And creatures and non-basic lands your opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped. It's just good. I mean, I don't know any way to explain it to you. There's another spell that we can use called Blind Obedience, which I will show you guys here in a second, that does a very similar thing. But, Thalia, use her. She's great in a human deck. Alright, we're going to be running 2 copies of Always Watching. If you're cool, you get a foil like me. It says, it's a 3-mana enchantment. Non-token creatures you control will get +1/+1 and Vigilance. So, of course, this is at the top of our mana curve. Which means we're going to need... This will be quite near the end of the game. Probably. Well, not end of the game, but about smack dab in the middle of it when we get to play that. So yeah, it's a great card, especially when you just need more power out and you want to attack to end the game. You definitely need that. We're going to be running 4 copies of Repel the Abominable. It's a 2-mana instant. Prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn by non-human sources. So, that, it's just really good. I don't know how to explain it. It's great in a humans deck. That's about all I can say about it. 2 copies of Blind Obedience. It's a 2-mana enchantment with Extort. Whenever you cast a spell, you may pay 1 white or black. This is a mono-white humans deck, so we're going to be paying white. And each opponent loses 1 life, and you gain that much life. Artifacts and creatures your opponents control will enter the battlefield tapped. So that kind of works into Thalia, but if you have Thalia out, that is more or less useless. Well, not completely useless, but if it's the only thing in your hand, it's not a bad play. 1 copy of Brave the Elements. Choose a color. White creatures you control gain protection from the chosen color until end of turn. That means if you really, really want to get a cheeky attack off on somebody, you can just play that and, you know, you can just play that and attack for a lot of that. For a lot of whatever. And if it's a monocolored deck like this is, they just can't do anything about it. We're going to be running 1 copy of Murder Investigation. Enchant creature you control. When enchanted creature dies, put X 1/1 soldier creature tokens on the battlefield, where X is its power. So that's pretty good. You can put that on Mycaius or Thalia's Lieutenant or something like that, and it'll just explode into a ton more creatures that you can block with. We're going to be running 1 copy of Stasis Snare. This is a 3 mana enchantment with flash. When Stasis Snare enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls until Stasis Snare leaves the battlefield. So, good removal, I'd say. Has flash, so you can play it on someone else's turn. We're going to be running, and finally, we're almost done, 2 copies of Cartouche of Solidarity. It's a 1 mana enchantment. Enchant creature you control. When Cartouche of Solidarity enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 White Warrior creature token with Vigilance. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has first strike. So you can play that on a Thalia's Lieutenant or maybe even a Grand Abolisher if you want your Grand Abolisher to stay safe. But I'm afraid I'm all tapped out for this video, guys. That makes up Mono White Humans. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please click the like button below, and I will see you guys in the next video. See ya.